Hey, Andrew. So thank you for jumping on a call with me and talking all things AI. So I just kind of want to jump right in and get started. And will you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, who you help, and all that stuff?
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for having me, Hannah. My name is Andrew Mitchell. I run Oplos Consulting. I focus on helping organizations understand their AI strategy, how they want to deploy AI across their business. That can range from everything of, I don't know what AI is, help me figure that out, to we have AI, we have certain tools that we're using, we're just not getting the right value out of those tools. So anything along that spectrum, I typically work with mid-sized businesses who are just trying to make sure that they're staying on the front end of what's possible with AI right now.
Awesome, awesome. So, the type of people that I serve are service-based businesses, and a lot of them are small business owners. So that's kind of where we're going to go with the direction of this. So, for the first question, it's going to be for service-based business owners who might be new to AI. What are some immediate areas where AI can make a significant impact in their business?
Absolutely. So, for small businesses, service-based businesses, where AI can really provide some quick value is when you think about those repetitive manual tasks that you are doing. That could be everything from bookkeeping, taking notes from a meeting, developing proposals and contracts that you're sending out maybe to your own clients. All those kinds of things that you're repeating the process several times, and maybe it's taking you a little bit longer than you would like. All of those types of activities are a great place to start with AI, building out some of the tools just to help you automate some of that, reduce your time. There's a big concept when it comes to using AI tools at the beginning that I think is really important for people to think about, which is this idea of like compounded time saving. So what I mean by that, you're a small business owner, you think about your week, right? 40, 50, 60 hours, whatever that might look like. Um, Even just a couple of hours saved here and there, comprehensively throughout the week can pay really, really big dividends. So some of those easy ways that if there's something that's currently taking you an hour to do, if you could get that down to 20 minutes through the help of an AI tool, those other 40 minutes free you up to do the work that you actually want to do. So I typically think about those kinds of places to start when you're not really sure where to dig in with AI to begin with.
Yeah, and that time saving is amazing. Like as a mom, I don't got time to do what I need to do. So yeah, that's
Right, exactly. Yeah.
very helpful.
Yeah. Get kind of like
Um,
full life, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you have like an example of a small business that really took advantage of this and made it work throughout their operations and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a small marketing group I was working with recently. They do a lot of like social media management for their clients, and they were spending a lot of time in their sales process and finding potential clients, doing lead generation, all that sort of thing. So they would do a lot of like manual searching online for potential clients, and then when they found a client, they would do a lot of manual outreach to them, and it was the same message, right? But they were typing it, sending it every single time, doing some of that manual follow up. And then if it led to an initial conversation, they would have the conversation, they would do all the follow up that that takes. And so we found some ways to implement a few tools where all of that kind of initial searching, it didn't completely remove the manual aspect, but they were able to deploy some tools that could at least give them a head start on searching and sourcing some potential leads. We then built a custom workflow, which we can talk about in some more depth in a little bit, that once they were able to find and identify their potential clients and integrated with their CRM, there was a workflow that would fire off the intro message. They didn't have to worry about crafting that and sending that each time on their own and actually going through and clicking send. It was just automatic. And then once they had a conversation with that potential client, if they reached out and scheduled something, they used an AI note taker to track all the notes for that conversation. And then there was an AI tool that would develop the follow up email that could be sent out the next day. And so instead of having to go through and do all of that manually, a lot of that was automated, and then they could spend 5 to 10 minutes each morning just looking through all of the drafted emails that they had, to send out for follow-ups as opposed to having to actually create all of those. And so, you think about again, well, a big topic today will be time saved and compounded time saved. But that 5 to 10 minutes of saved time, even just in the follow up from each of those sales calls, had really big impacts for them. And again, they were able to take more meetings, do more of the work they actually wanted to do.
Awesome. What were some of those? I'm curious. What were some of those tools that you were using? And I'd love to know about that workflow that you were mentioning.
Yeah, for sure. So there's all kinds of tools out there. I add that big caveat, right? That
Yeah.
there's there's hundreds of apps for any use case. So none of the ones that I will mention today are necessarily an endorsement of those, or some of the ones that I'm familiar with and use. So for the note taking app, they used an app called Fireflies. There's others like Otter and some others that are kind of top of the landscape right now. But they use Fireflies. It recorded all the transcript from everything that they said during their conversation and generated a summary. And then there's some automation tools like Zapier or
Mm.
Make that allow you just to kind of cling together some tools that don't normally interact with each other. And it's kind of a simple integration you can create between those tools. So they had it set up that the notes from their conversations, that output would run through ChatGPT. It would summarize, it would develop an email, it would plop that email draft in their Outlook. So the next day, they just had to go look at their Outlook, and there were however many sales conversations they had that prior day. Let's say, for the sake of example, six. There were six email drafts ready to go. They could just open it up, take a look, make sure it all looked okay, click send. And so just using tools that they were already familiar with and honestly probably already using, just finding some ways to connect those with something like a Zapier.
Nice. I love Zapier or
It's really fun.
Zapier. Sometimes I call it Zapier, Zapier. I never know, but I love that
Name
thing.
it yourself. Yeah, until you hear someone else say it, who knows if I'm saying it right or
Yeah.
not.
Well, it is like zaps, right? So you say
Mhm.
you've made some zaps, so
We created
Zapier makes
that.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Ah, that's awesome. Okay, so hold on. Let me go to. All right, so let's shift back into some questions. I loved all of what you just said though. But what would you say are some common like misconceptions that small business owners might have, or maybe like some myths that you can bust about AI?
Yeah, for sure. So there's two that come to mind immediately. The first is I think because AI is kind of in that like tech bro space, right? There's this misconception that I've got to be a developer or really technical to get the value that I want out of AI. And that's just simply not the case. There are so many tools out there now that you can design an app, a website, a tool, whatever it is, just through text, just by telling some sort of app like what it is that you want to do. I built my website just as in my own independent practice in that way, right? Using kind of an AI enabled tool just to say, I want it to look like this, and it would generate that. So there's a lot of tools out there like that that remove that technical barrier to building some really
Mhm.
cool things. And the second thing I would say is I think the way that we approach AI for a lot of people, or for a lot of my clients, deserves a little bit of a mental shift. Think of AI instead of just like a tool and this, amorphous thing that is like the silver bullet can solve these problems. Think of it as another team member. You're hiring another assistant, and the kind of directions that you would give to a new employee, helping them onboard, helping them understand you, helping them understand your language, helping them understand your culture. We take the same approach when it comes to some of these AI tools. We give them the tools to understand us, to understand our language, and helping use that kind of mental framing I think can be really important, because it also then has a bit of a subtle influence on the types of tasks that you are giving to some of these AI tools. And so we can talk if we want to about prompting and good examples and all of that. But just thinking of these tools as your assistants, as a team member that you're actually hiring and bringing onto your team, I think is a big mental shift that is a bit of a change for people when they first start using AI.
Yeah, so I jumping ahead a question, but we're just gonna go to that question was definitely I wanted to talk about mindset because I've heard people say, "Oh, you're lazy because you're using AI," or they're just like there's negativity towards it. And a lot of people ask me, like, I mean, my dad was like, "Do you think AI is gonna take your job?" And I was like, I mean, no. I was like, maybe in the future, probably, but not right now, like, because you still really need strategy right now. But yeah, so when people really come at it as it can be strategic. Like you can use it for your advantage. Like don't be scared of it, don't be shy of it, or even don't say my business is too small for it because that's not the case. Like you said, you can buy back a lot of your time just by implementing it. So I love that you covered that. Do you want to add anything else with mindset? Because that was a question that I had.
Yeah, just that size piece that you talked about, there's a lot of speculation out in the world right now that this is kind of the age of the small business, right? The age of the solopreneur, the age of the 1 to 2 person team, because of the extra bandwidth and capacity and tools that AI can bring. So certainly, if you are feeling like our business is too small, we can't handle that. I would say it's the opposite. Small businesses are really the ones that I think can value the most from some of these tools because it can really give you some extra power in your day, give you some insights maybe you didn't have before. I run my own consulting practice. It's just me. I am my IT department and my marketing department and my content generation department and all of that. And all of that has been made exponentially easier by having tools that can help me brainstorm, that can help me think through, is this the right approach? Help me validate my thinking on this topic. What else should I be thinking about? And just reducing, not to get too technical and psychological here, but reducing that like cognitive load. You have so many things that you're thinking about every single day as a small business owner, and you're wearing all of those different hats. So if you have something else out there that you can help you come up with just that initial brainstorm, come up with those initial ideas, and I don't have to exert as much energy and brain power to think about that at the beginning, then to your point, I can apply the strategy, I can apply my expertise on top and take the kinds of things that maybe I would hand off to a junior employee if I had one, right, to do. Hand those things off and then let me really apply my expertise in the way that makes the most sense.
Yeah, I love it for the brainstorming aspect. So I have so many things on ChatGPT. I'll just come up with something in my head, even like personal or like anything like that. I'm just like, wait, tell me something about this, which I'm just gonna go into that question. I've got like two that are specific to ChatGPT, and
Yeah.
those are the two questions that I did get asked by clients, which is of course because it's kind of the big one that people like to talk about. So when it comes to like the prompts, is what I really want to get into. I was actually talking to my brother the other day, and he was like, "Yeah, I use it, and I'll just be like, make it better, make it better, make it better." And I'm like, well, I mean, that it works. Like that's what I used to do, but if you come at it in a smart way in the beginning, then you can really make it work for you and you're not having to be like, make it better, make it better. But even though you still can do that. But do you have like a framework that someone could use when it comes to using the right prompt so they can get like something really useful and usable in that one go? No, maybe
Yeah.
not the first go, but you know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So there's all kinds of prompt frameworks out there, and they all kind of have different flavors of the same idea. I like to use the RACE framework, RACE, which stands for role, action, context, and expectation. So the idea here is we're used to using search engines. A lot of us
Mhm.
come to the first time we're using something like ChatGPT, we're used to using Google search. And so typically what we put in from a prompt is really short and it's really generic. And the way that these LLMs, which are large language models like ChatGPT or Claude or anything like that, they work really well with specificity. So coming at this with a role, play the role of a marketing manager, give it an action, right? Like write a welcome email for new clients for a wellness coaching business, right? So you're giving it a role, you're giving it an action, you're giving it some context. this is for a new customer. This is someone who I've been pursuing for 3 months. I met them in this way. Give it some sort of background to what you're trying to do, and then give it an expectation. That could be the tone, the format, all those kinds of things, right? So keep it friendly and professional. Keep it three short paragraphs, right? Whatever it might be. That framework tends to give you a pretty good response on the front end. But even, your brother brings up a really good point, which is another kind of mental piece when using some of these tools, which is this like meta use of them, which is help me write a better prompt, right? So one of the tricks early on when I was trying to get better at using different tools is I would say to ChatGPT, I'm going to tell you a bunch of things that I'm trying to accomplish. I want you to generate a prompt for me that would get me the result I'm looking for. And it would do that. And I could even turn on my voice mode and just ramble for a couple of minutes and say, I'm trying to do this. I'm thinking about this. What would a good prompt look like to get this output? And that really helped me understand even my own prompt writing, the kinds of specificity that I needed to include, all of that. But that role, action, context, expectation framework works really well to your point of being able to get something that's pretty good on the first try.
That's awesome. I do that, but I did not know that it was like called that.
Yeah.
So that's like it's nice to put like a word to what I was doing. I was just like,
Yeah.
and like how you talked about of a solopreneur, it's just you, so you're putting in, like I do all the time. And I mean, I do branding, and I'll be like, act as my brand strategist
Yeah.
just to help me. And I'm actually in a marketing class right now, so I have a lot of like advertising is on my mind, so I'm like, act as my ad agent. Or when I was like getting this together, I was like, act as my producer to give me kind of an outline of how I should follow this. Like you can just throw in roles and it
Yeah.
will, yeah,
I
it's
was
it's great.
I took some time last Friday. I was taking some time just thinking about my business, my operations, and I said, play the role of an executive coach. Like
Yep.
here's what I'm doing. Here's what I would like to be doing more of. Help me structure my week better. Help me think through my approach better. Right? Just that all kinds of roles are possible. And giving it that role kind of directs it a little bit of where to look within its training to find the answers. So the rationale there is you tend to get answers that are more aligned to what you're actually looking for if you can give it that framing up front. But yeah,
Yep.
very very powerful and fun to be kind of creative too with what you're asking it and the role that you're giving it.
Yeah, I love though when it will come to something and I'm like, that's cheesy. No.
Yeah.
Oh, like, please no. Which will bring me into my next question is, do you have any advice or tips, which I have a few that I do myself to make sure it sounds like myself, or maybe it sounds like your business and it's not obvious that you're using ChatGPT or any type of AI?
Yeah, in that race framework, that last piece around expectation. So I do tend to describe the kind of tone that I want, but I also have started including in all my prompts something to the effect of ensure you are using language that would not be detected by a program looking for
Oh,
AI written text, right? And so there's tools out there like Grammarly and others that have these flags for if something was written by AI, and we kind of know what those formulas are. Don't get me on my soapbox about the M dash, which I use in my regular writing all the time. So I'm a little salty that that one is always flagged as an AI thing. But so giving it that direction at the end of my prompt helps it to kind of avoid some of that. There's some weird words, right, that tend to always pop up in some of our AI writing, the like seamlessly, effortlessly, those kinds of like, almost like corporate jargon descriptors tend to show up a lot, which is really funny. But I find giving it that direction really helps. What are some of the things that you have done that you find to be helpful as you kind of make it talk like you?
yeah. So, you can add a document.
Mm.
So I have a brand messaging guide that I use, and it's not something that I made myself, but I do want to start making for my clients because it's
Yeah.
gold. But it like has the words that I like to use, the words that I do not like to use. It has like who I target, my audience, what they're needing, all that kind of stuff. It breaks everything down when it comes to my brand and my messaging and how I'm wanting to position myself. So that is gold. Like I barely have to change like a few things. And the more I use it, the more you use it, the more it really starts to like I can read it now and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, am I talking to myself?" Like I mean, it's not quite there yet, but it's pretty good. So that's a great one. And then and I know I'm on the paid version with ChatGPT, just like the $20 a month, but I do know that on the free version you can upload documents, but I think you got maybe like a limited amount that you can upload.
Yeah, it's not as many. You're right, but you can do a little bit of that. If there, I always work with my clients too, or some of my clients I've worked with, that if there's something that they're doing on a regular basis that's kind of the same output. For example, I was working with a nonprofit client recently, and they do a lot of grant submissions, and so they have to write several grants every single month, and every grant is a little bit different, but there are some portions that are fairly consistent, right? Describing their organization, describing their mission, their values, all that sort of thing. A good example of one of those repetitive tasks that they do on a regular basis that could use some automation. So we created a custom GPT where if you're again on the paid plan, this is something that anybody can do. You just go and create a little interface and you tell it what you want it to do, and it kind of does all the configuration in the background, and you have the ability to upload, I think, up to 10 documents, at least right now. That number may shift by tomorrow, who knows? But you can upload 10 documents as like a knowledge base, and it uses those, it reads those. And so now, when they need to generate a grant draft, a lot of the organizational information, mission piece, it gets it pretty close even on the first draft because it has all of the information about the organization. They have prior grants they've written as examples, and they can pull from all of those, like you were saying. And it sounds pretty good. From the first try. There was a change recently with ChatGPT 2 that the memory of the program was expanded, and so now it has access to all the things that you've ever said. And so whenever you give it directions, one of the things you can do now is say, remember this change for the future. Um, and while that's not perfect, it helps a little bit so that you stop having to make kind of the same changes over and over again, and it learns a little bit about you and what you want your output to look like.
That's interesting. I actually noticed that it has done that lately. And
Yeah.
then also another one, which is exactly what you're saying that I was gonna mention, is if like you've done any blog posts or anything like that in the past. So the fact that they've put together they all the stuff that they already are doing for their organization and all that stuff is already in a document and
Yeah.
they're uploading that, it helps a lot. And another tip I just want to put out there is for one of my clients, she's a leadership coach, so she'll do trainings.
Oh
So
yeah.
something you could also do is record your training and then have like something like Descript or something like that transcribe it, and you could upload that, and that can be like a basis for any other like trainings that you have coming up, or you can say this is how I talk in that training. If you have like clients or someone in the training asking questions, you can get those on the transcription and be like, what type of questions are my clients or in these trainings, what type of questions have they been asking? And you can kind of look at it in that way. I think that's kind of a great way to use that as well.
Yeah,
So let me
absolutely. Yeah.
so what's one I know I feel like we've kind of talked a little bit on about this, but what's one behind the scenes task that AI can take over that actually might surprise people?
Yeah, I think about pulling information from the web. That sounds general at first. Let me get a little bit more what I mean by that. Um, Client research. So whether it is going out and scraping some data from different websites about different individuals that you've identified, there's some pretty immense power that AI can bring where you can search the web, you can pull in publicly available information, you can go to a lot of different sites and pull that information, summarize all of that, And so you can pretty quickly get like a summary of a potential client's like recent activity, some of their LinkedIn updates, if they've been mentioned in the news at all. So I tend to use that before I go meet with somebody or a potential client, just as a way to get a quick rundown of like what's been going on in their world for the last couple of months. And so I can show up to a prospective client meeting much well informed, much better informed about what they are doing, what's going on, what kind of problems they might bring up in that meeting. So again, if you think about some of those custom GPTs and some of those automated repetitive tasks, I have a custom GPT set up. I can just feed in a name, give it a link, and it'll run and take what used to spend not a ton of time, right? Maybe 20, 30 minutes researching somebody, but now it's done within 30 seconds. So it's a really, really easy one.
Nice. Are you using ChatGPT for that or Gemini or which one are you using for that?
So I do use ChatGPT for, and then I have some other, there's some other tools like Browse AI and others who can do some like website scraping. So there's some organizations that I follow that I work with on a regular basis, and I have some robots, let's say quote unquote robots, trained to keep looking at their websites, and if there's a change in some way, it'll notify me and pull that information. It operates kind of in the same way as like a Google alert, right? So some things that we're already familiar with, maybe already using, but just a little bit of extra power to it.
Okay, that's cool. I haven't heard of that one. Browse AI. I'm gonna have to get on that one because
Yeah.
it's a big one of, well, for me is market research, and I'm
Mhm.
like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, market research is hard, but now it is kind of maybe getting a little bit easier. But I'm still like I was Chat GPT for a while, and then now I'm just now starting to branch out. So that's why I'm loving this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm gonna like go back and watch this and take a bunch of notes. So,
The thing, just to that point, there are so many tools out there. I think it's really easy to get overwhelmed, right? And just as you think about your clients too, right? Like if you are a smaller business, there's so many things happening. I'm in this work every single day, and it's still really tough for me to stay up on like what is the new thing, what's come out, what's Claude doing now versus what Gemini is doing now versus what XAI versus ChatGPT. Like there's so many things out there, so it's always best to start with, like you were just saying, right? Like, what's the problem I'm trying to solve? What's the thing that's causing me pain right now in my process? And let me zero in on that. Versus, I don't know if anyone out there has a really good grasp of like all of the tools that are out there.
yeah.
It's probably impossible, right? There's there's just so many, and there's I'm sure many thousands more being added every day.
Yeah, I will. This says, I mean, this is completely off of what I was going to ask you, but I am curious, have you heard about the like chat like agents? Have you used those? Or like I'd love to know like just a little bit about that. I know that wasn't one of my questions, but do you have
Yeah,
any like yeah.
yeah. So 2025 has been declared the year of the agents.
Oh,
So they are coming. So think about, you have like an LLM where you can give it input, and it has been trained to provide you an output, or some of the deeper research where it can actually go out to the web and find information and bring it back to you and summarize it and all of that. And then you move along to something like a custom workflow where you've identified there's some sort of trigger that I'm giving. And then, a Zapier flow is going to kick off, and maybe it's going to include an AI element here and there. So then you get to this idea of an AI agent where, in its truest form, it's not reliant on like the human intervention to begin with, right? It is looking at something, it is prepared to move, it is thinking, it is reasoning, or quote unquote thinking, it is reasoning, it is pulling in information. So there's a lot of hype right now around agents. This is again kind of the year that we're thinking that they'll be really deployed, to do a lot of work. And right now, some of the kind of cool things we're seeing agents do, it's everything from some of those like rote repetitive tasks, right? It is like reaching out to a contact. It's a restaurant confirming reservations, right? They don't have to do anything manually anymore. It'll just, the agents will go, it'll call somebody, it'll talk to them, right? It's got voice enabled, it'll respond to them, it'll confirm their reservation. Or um, content generation, right? There's people who their entire LinkedIn is essentially being managed by an AI agent right now. It'll look at posts on the feed, it'll respond to posts, it'll comment, it'll develop new post ideas, and if you want it to, it can post those if you've set up all the parameters. So it's exciting for me. It's still a little bit of the Wild West right now because it's still a little bit new, but it's that idea of the like assistant, the true assistant who can almost kind of reason for itself and do some tasks on its own without relying on kind of the human trigger or the like trigger that a custom workflow requires.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting. Okay. So since we are kind of talking about the different types of tools, what are some tools that some service-based business owners should really be using? So I know probably a lot of them have heard about ChatGPT, which is one that we've talked about. So other than that, and I know we've talked about a few others throughout this, but what would really be some go-to ones that they could maybe start getting their eyes on or that can really help in their business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we've talked about some of the note taker apps, things like Otter, Fireflies. Those are really good. I do think depending on what like email and operating system you're using, if you're a Google heavy organization, looking at something like Gemini over ChatGPT can be very helpful. It has really nice plugins to your Drive and your calendar and your documents and your Gmail and all those kinds of things. Um, I right now I think we're seeing a really interesting push where essentially every app that we're using probably has some sort of Gen AI capability being pushed to it. Um, I use Notion for a lot of my personal tracking. I use it as my CRM, as my task tracker, and all of that. It has its own Gen AI capability, available to it. So chances are anything that a small business owner is subscribed to and using is probably rolling out its own version of some sort of AI assistant AI tool. I think it's it goes back in my mind to that question of, if you take a step back and think about your day, your week, your month, your processes, like what are those pain points you're trying to solve? What are those areas that you want to automate? What are those areas that you want to reduce the amount of time it's taking you to do that? And a quick search, a quick chat GPT conversation will uncover dozens of tools that can help with that. One of my favorite prompts actually that I use a lot, and I do this a lot with my clients when in some of our first meetings, is just to say, essentially, give me a list of 20 use cases in whatever function you're in, my type of business that I may not be aware of. Give me a description of each of those use cases and give me two or three tools with hyperlinks that will do that use case. And that opens up the door to, again, dozens of different tools based on whatever pain point you're trying to solve. They'll point you to a new tool that you may not know existed. As I said earlier, there's so many tools out there, there's so many apps out there, it can be really overwhelming. But framing it around like what you're trying to actually do or what are some of those use cases is kind of an easier way to find what you're looking for versus just approaching the landscape holistically.
Yeah, that's actually a smart way of going about that. I'm actually going to use that. And then like the CRMs, my CRM, I use HoneyBook, and I like to say I only use Chat GPT as AI, but it's not true because everything like, and I use Loom for my videos. They have AI in it now as well. Like everything is incorporating it, and it's yeah,
Right.
it's awesome though. I love it. I'm all
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, it's great, and it can be a little overwhelming. Like I said, like who has the capacity necessarily to go through and look at every single one of those tools and figure out what they're trying to do. So that's where that idea of some intentional design can come in, and those are some of the always the questions to ask of, is it worth it to explore the functionality in this specific tool? Am I wasting enough time doing manual processes that I could benefit from that or not? And that's going to be a different answer for every business owner based on what their day looks like.
Yeah, yeah. So one last question that I do have, well, kind of last question. Where do you see the biggest opportunity for small businesses using AI in the next year, and how can they start preparing now for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in my opinion, the biggest opportunity right now is personalization and optimization. So, what I mean by that is using AI to deliver tailored experiences at scale. In the marketing space, we're seeing more examples of AI bolt ons to things like your websites that would allow you to personalize the content someone sees when they come to your website based on when was the last time they interacted with you, what was the last thing that they saw, are they in your sales process at all in any place, and kind of personalizing that experience that relies on a pretty heavy data analysis engine that AI can do really, really well. That also applies to some social media aspects and kind of that tailored experience. But even if you think about some of your client outreach, right? Like the one of the things that AI can really do very well is any kind of output at scale. So, you know, giving you 10 versions of something or 1,000 versions of something, it's a lot easier to do that with an AI tool versus if you're trying to do that manually. So being able to deploy those kinds of personalized messages, um, hyper segmentation of audiences to that messaging is a big opportunity right now, to create that more personalized experience for customers. And then automation, whether that is in your own internal processes, or your client experience, um, you know, simple things like a scheduler or chat bot, right, that can be talked to 24/7 on your website that will help you find time, with you as a business owner. Those kinds of automated tools, I think we're going to see rapidly increase. We talked a little bit about AI agents. I do think we're going to see more and more uses of those come about. I think, if anything, we're going to hear more and more about that. We're just kind of in the early days right now, so I think there are some very flashy examples that are kind of good uses of AI agents. But I think over the next year, we will see the market really prove out what are some ways that businesses can leverage those agents in a way that makes sense and provides a good ROI on the time and training and everything else that would need to happen on the front end to actually deploy those.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I want to give an action step here. So we've talked about a lot and everything. So I want anyone watching, my clients, all that kind of stuff, everybody, anybody, what can they do now, either right now, today, or this week to get started? Whether that be saving their time, setting up workflows, automations, just that first step that they can do, other than mindset, obviously. I mean, but yeah,
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind outside of just explore, right? If you haven't used these tools, then by all means, go explore, go start a conversation with ChatGPT and kind of see what happens. Um, think of a specific problem or process in your business that you want to optimize and ask ChatGPT to put together a strategic plan to address that. Tell it you want step by step guidance of how to implement that plan. Tell it you want all the considerations to take into account, potential risks and pitfalls, and potential benefits, and see what it spits out. Chances are it'll give you some really good ideas about a problem that you've been having or experiencing, or a pain point that you're feeling, that maybe you hadn't thought about before. So just having that simple question of, here's something I'm experiencing, help me put a plan together to address this, is something anyone can do right now and see some immediate value to solve something they're experiencing.
yeah. And even if it's just like opening up your mind to like, oh yeah, that's possible. Maybe you're not like actually going to implement it right away, but you're like, oh, I didn't even think about that's something that I could start doing. So yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So, for anyone out there that's like, okay, I love what y'all are talking about, but I don't have the time to do this. I don't really care to understand it, but maybe they want to hire you. What can you give us your contact, how they can work with you and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is www.oplosconsulting.com. That's OPLOS. You can reach me at andrew@oplosconsulting.com. Try to keep it easy. Um, on LinkedIn with all that information as well. And again, if you come out of this conversation, you're thinking, this sounds really exciting. I want to explore this. I'm not really sure where to start. That's a great way for me to come in and help you just kind of frame that conversation, frame what it is that you're actually wanting to accomplish. Maybe you're in the position where you're saying, you know what, we're using AI. It might have team members who are ChatGPT experts, but we don't have an organizational plan of how we're using these tools. We can't really answer the questions of what does good look like? How are we using these tools well? Are we getting the value that we want out of these tools? It's another place that I'm happy to come and help drive that conversation. Or maybe you're thinking about, we have several complex processes. There's probably tools out there that we may not know exist, and we just need someone to come and help us explore that landscape. That's also something that I do for a lot of my clients, of just what's out there. Does this work? Does this other vendor fit your needs? And if not, what would fit those needs? So all of those are areas we're happy to help from Oplos Consulting. So just please reach out, and happy to chat about what you might need.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was a good talk. Like I said, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna take some notes from this. So thank you so much for your time.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.